Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very happy to host today my daily TV show on Media Inform channel. The good friend of mine and the prominent American novelist, Mr. Aaron Charpentier. Mr. Aaron, thank you very much for joining our show.
Thank you, Mr. Kацin. Thank you for having me again.
Mr. Charpentier, we had an interview about 2 weeks ago, and yesterday, Ukraine passed a new deadline, a new very terrible score, let's say, a borderline 50 days since the war has started. 50 days since Russia launched its military aggression towards Ukraine. And obviously the world changed during the last 50 days. And now we have an incredible support from our partners around the world, and especially from the United States. And now we are in the better position than we used to be before the war, because now Western countries, they're ready to supply special military equipment, which we crucially need in order to tackle Russian aggression. So this is a very serious mark, 50 days. So what do you think, how the situation has changed from your side? You follow US media, and you obviously follow the war which is happening on Ukrainian territory. Can we say that still this war is in the spotlight of American media, and still US citizens are aware of the way this war actually goes through?
I think it's still in the media, but less so compared to 50 days ago. I think that Americans are just becoming sort of used to it, and I think that they're somewhat going back to business as usual. And but I don't think that it's out of the news by far, and it's definitely in the subconsciousness of the American people, collective conscious of the American people. But I think that it's a very painful thing for people to watch. But I think it's necessary for people to watch what's going on every day. I'm not saying that the American people have to be stuck to the TV screen watching the atrocities that are committed in Ukraine, but they need to at least have their daily dose of the news in Ukraine, because it's something that's very important. It's something that is affecting a European country. And the humanitarian cost is extremely high, and as I said last week, I quoted Elie Wiesel, and I had said that love is not the opposite of hate, right? It's indifference. And I think that we may hate what's going on in Russia, but if we just and then to see we might hate the atrocities that Putin's committed, but we can't just idly stand by and just be indifferent, because indifference is worse. So I think if we just turn off the TV and we don't read about the atrocities online, then I think that we're just being indifferent. And I'm not. I think that being aware of what's going on is is very important, even if you can't really necessarily act on it all the time. But I think that knowing what's going on is important. And I think that you know, it's just a way to keep what's going on in the news, right? Because a lot of you know, the news will have higher ratings, right? Especially when the news is, you know, the Ukrainian atrocities, the invasion Ukraine, when it's showed, you know, then the news will, you know, the media will keep it in the news, right? Because let's not forget, I know it's kind of crude to say, but it's given the circumstances, but it is a business too, right? So I think it's very important to not be indifferent.
Mr. Charpentier, probably heard that last week President Biden was the first top official, the first leader of Western state who publicly acknowledged and stated that this Bucha massacre, which Russians have committed by killing many Ukrainians in Kiev region, and I think not only in Kiev region, we will see the same picture in many corners of Ukraine. So President Biden, he was the first president who stated that it can be considered as a genocide of Ukrainians. Obviously, it has to be proved by international law, international jurisdiction, but it looks like this is a genocide. And this is a very important message which was sent by President Biden, because many European states, they look how United States behave and what is an attitude of the United States. So it was a very important message to Europe that United States president acknowledged that it looks like that what Russians have committed in Ukraine can be classified as a genocide. Let's talk about, let's say, long-term implications of this. Yeah, do you think that at the end of the day we will see Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, on the court bench, and he will be prosecuted, and obviously the judgment, he will face the judgment in the International Criminal Court about the facts which were revealed in Ukraine?
Well, first of all, he has committed genocide, right? And that's very clear. He's deliberately targeting Ukrainian people, Ukrainian citizens, and simply because, and he has his own ideology behind it. He's not just blindly going to war for his own self-interest or his country's interest. I think, I mean, there may be some of that, you know, perhaps he doesn't want Ukraine to be a NATO state because, you know, Ukraine borders, you know, Russia. So that, you know, there's a kind of a practical side to it too, you know. But I also think that yes, I think that he wants to erase the Ukrainian identity. He's implied this, and he believes that Ukraine doesn't have its own history. That he believes Ukraine is tied to Russia, even part of its history is Russian. You know, both countries have influenced one another throughout history, right? Perhaps Russia has influenced Ukraine a bit more in modern history, but I wouldn't say, you know, but they both influence each other. And to say that Ukraine is Russian, which he implies, is obviously not the case. So I think that, part of the reason for for Putin going to war with Russia, with Ukraine, is because it's for irrational reasons, and it amounts to genocide, war crimes. So I believe that if the West could capture Putin, then it's possible that he could be tried for war crimes. I believe that he should be. Will he be? It's an extremely difficult question that I think even a lot of experts couldn't answer.
Actually, you made a very prominent error stating that Putin went with the war against Russia. I totally agree with you, because Putin not only went with the war against Ukraine, he also went with the war against Russia, because at the end of the day, Russia will become much weaker state than it used to be before Russia launched this war in Ukraine, because now we see how Russia is losing its capital. Western companies, they're leaving Russia. They take out investments, etc., etc. So basically, at the end of the day, Russia will suffer economically from this war and politically from this war. Mr. Charpentier, obviously, well, we know that the politics is very cynical, and in Ukraine, people were shocked when they heard the remark which was made by President of France, Mr. Macron, who actually stated that Russians and Ukrainians actually are brothers, so there's a brotherhood. And it was so cynical, and actually President Macron didn't want to acknowledge that Russians are committing a genocide in Ukraine, unfortunately. Unfortunately, Mr. Macron didn't follow President Biden's example and refused to acknowledge that this is a genocide. So, Mr. Charpentier, what do you think? Which implications? I know that you have many French acquaintances, and obviously, French culture. You even have French ancestors,
So I'm just American.
Yeah, obviously you're American, but you have many ancestors, and also including from France. So that's why I'm asking you. So, which implications and how this will be resulted? On let's say elections output in France. We know that there will be a second tour of elections. And what do you think? How this argument in France, how actually Macron's position will affect his chance to win elections? And you obviously know that his competitor, Marine Le Pen, who will compete him in the second round of elections, she has even worse position against Ukraine. So my questions will be, first of all, how Macron's statement will affect his chance to win elections, and generally, why France is so linked towards Russia? Why French politicians they don't want to have a very defined strength position against Russia by supporting Ukraine in this war? Why they're trying to play double game show,
It could possibly stem from Germany and France not supporting Ukraine, to join the European Union, right? So I think that maybe now they feel that they made a mistake, and I think that they probably don't want to take responsibility for that, and because it's a big mistake,
I understand.
And I think that's probably one of the big reasons. It's just really Germany is in a different position because Germany is limited, right, by law as to what they can do, because after World War II, right. But I think for France that France could do a lot more by law. I think that President Macron's decision to not fully support the Ukrainian people in Ukraine, and not in being, to use the term indifferent from Elie Wiesel's context again, I think that it will have major consequences. Because this is also a security issue too. Not acting and not taking a really bold step to fighting Russia it's a security issue. I think that things could get a lot worse on the world stage, and I think that it's very much possible that the war could spill out into native territory. And obviously we know what will happen what will have to happen if that occurs, right?
Mr. Charpentier, thank you very much for this interview. As always, it is a great pleasure for me to take an interview from you. You have a unique position because you have been to Ukraine. You know Ukrainians very well, and being in the United States, being the citizen of the United States, you can look from the different perspective and obviously provide your own overview of the situation. I strongly appreciate an opportunity to take an interview and interview you. Thank you very much, Mr. Aaron Charpentier, prominent American novelist, a good friend of mine. Participated today in our daily show at Media Informed TV channel. Thank you very much, Mr. Charpentier. Have a nice day.
It's an honor to be invited on your show again, and also I'd like to add that I'm very proud of you for staying in Ukraine and fighting. You may not be fighting with a gun, but you're fighting in your own way, right? In the media, and you could have very easily left Odessa by now. And so I think it's people fight in their own way, and I think that you're a true patriot. And again, I think that Americans can learn a valuable lesson on patriotism, because the patriotism that I've seen it's amazing. The Ukrainian patriotism is really, it's just it's something that I haven't seen in any other countries in the world.
Mr. Charpentier, thank you very much for these words, and I think that soon we will obviously have another chance to talk via this format. So have a nice day. Thank you very much, Mr. Charpentier.
Thank you, sir.